Hello, I'm Daniel Heffley, and today I'm going to teach you about Away Physics and Away 3D. First of all, you're going to want to go to the Away 3D website, away3d.com/download, download the source files. Then you're also going to want to go to the GitHub for Away 3D/Away Physics-core-fp11 right there, or just Google Away Physics and it'll take you straight there to get the source code from that. And after you unzip it and copy it wherever you keep your source code or your SWICs, and yeah, make sure you get the Away Physics SWIC even if you have the source code, and add it to your library, otherwise it won't compile. You also need to make sure you have the Flex SDK. I have the Flex SDK Air and Plus Air installed. Make sure that's installed along with the standalone debug flash player. And also make sure that you are running at least flash player 11.2. Okay, so we got basic class here, main. It compiles, all that. Hello there. Okay, so first off, we're going to want to make a view object, which is needed to see anything in 3D. View 3D. Woo. Forgot var. Okay. Init, so protected function init void. So we'll do view gets new view 3D. As you can see, you can add a already scene that's set up, camera, a renderer, force software, profile, all that. I don't know exactly what everything means, but just starting off the basic, having everything null works great for beginning. Do that. You want stage dot add child, and we add the view, which makes it really nice because it acts like any other movie clip or sprite or anything. And then we want to render, otherwise we won't see anything, so we need to set up an enter frame handler. Add event listener, enter frame, and we'll just call it loop. Protected var, oh, no, function loop, $e event gets null, just in case. Void. Okay. Right here, we're just going to do simply view dot render. And so when you go building project, okay, run it. Oh, halted with errors. Namespace not found. Oh, Protec. There. That would make a difference. And it's all black, but that means it's good because it was white earlier. That means it's rendering. There's just no objects in the scene. So let's make add objects. Protected function add objects void. Okay, so we want to make some new objects. So let's make a cube because that's simple. So let's do var cube. It's new cube geometry. And then gets new cube geometry. Width, we'll just do 100, 100, 100. Yeah, that'll work. We can change that later, and then that gives us our basic cube geometry. We also want to give it a material. The most easiest material is a color material. So color material. Let's new color material, which is very basic and all that. So let's do a nice red. FF 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can also adjust the alpha, so if you want to make it somewhat transparent, which is also really nice, but let's make it very opaque. I think that's right. Okay, and then finally we need to make a mesh object. I'll just call it mesh to hold the cube geometry in the color material. That's new mesh. So we just put in the geometry, so the cube and the color. And there we go. And then all we have to do is view dot add child. No, wait. View dot scene. Otherwise, it'd be adding it somewhere else. Dot add child and mesh. We probably won't see it because the camera. Oh, we will. We just got a cube. Now, what we can do up in here is adjust the camera so we have a little better view. View dot camera dot, and let's do position. We'll pass it in a new vector. Vector 3D. We don't want it at 0, 0, 0. We'll keep x at 0. Let's do 50. Well, it's 100 tall. So let's do 200. And z, we'll do also 500. Now it's difficult to look at stuff. However, down here, since view dot camera, instead of trying to do all your vector math to make sure you're looking at the right position, you can camera dot look at, you can make it look at the mesh. Mesh dot position. Let's check. I wasn't looking. Yeah. Dot position. And it should just look at 0, 0, 0, but okay. Boop. There we go. And that way we could go and edit, like we want to make X 500. We don't have to readjust everything. So yeah, we got a nice little cube. Okay. So that's adding objects. Physics. Okay, now let's change this. Let's make this cube 1000 x, 10y, and 1000. And let's move its position. Dot position gets new vector 3D. Let's move it down a little bit. So 0. Let's do -10. Well, actually, no, -5, because the pivot point, or the center point for the object, is in the center by default. You can adjust that, but I prefer not to. And 0. So that should keep it at the same. So we should get a nice big plane, and we can move this back to 1000, and that to 1000. Get a nice big view. Maybe a little far. So the view. Nah, we're not going to mess with that. You can also adjust the lens, but that's a bit more in depth. So we're going to try to keep this simple. Okay. We also want to add physics. So here. We got that. We're going to add... Well, first, we got to set up the physics world. So, here we'll do protected. Let's see if I can spell that right. Or we'll just call it world to keep it. It's AWP Dynamics World. Okay. So world gets. See, I'm gonna have to double check. So 1 second. We're back. So it gets AWP Dynamics dot get instance. So it's a singleton and you're not running multiple ones. Okay, and then we want world dot init with dbvt broad phase, and yeah, that makes it go. And then so also when you're looping, you want to world dot on world dot step, and then it gives a timestamp, max substeps, and a fixed timestamp. So timestamp, and you want 1 divided by 60, but to make it fast, you just do 0.0333, and that's about the same, and everything else will keep the same. So yeah, so every time it goes through, it will update the world. So we do have physics. Now let's add physics to our scene. So let's make another object. I'm just going to copy all this. And we'll call it cube 2, color 2. I know, so creative, and mesh 2. And all my naming conventions. Okay. Instead of negative, let's give it 200. Okay, and so we got the basics of that. Before we add it to the scene, though, var, let's see. Once again, I'm trying to remember. var, we'll call it body. It is a physics. That was AWP physics. 1 second. Body, rigid body, that's it, not physics body, sorry. AWP rigid body gets new rigid body. Make this short and sweet. Now you want to pass it in the collision shape, so we'll just do new AWP. Now this is where it gets confusing. Instead of a cube shape, it is a box shape. That's the only one that Away Physics doesn't. It has a weird name change, sadly. Oh well. It's one of the few things I dislike about it, but it's just a minor thing. Box shape, and then you want to pass it a container, so that would be the mesh. And then, or mesh 2. And then mass, if it's 0, it will be static. We want it to be dynamic, so it will fall. Otherwise, yeah. And then, semicolon, body dot, not body, world dot, add rigid body and body. Add that, and it should. Oh, before we do it, it's going to add it at 0, 0, 0. So we can body dot. So can I warp? Nope. That would be position. Get mesh 2 dot position. Another little thing I wish Away Physics would implement is it just takes the mesh position, but it doesn't. So let's render that real quick. Okay, so yeah, let's test. Let's see what we have. Whoop. Well, that fell through. But that means physics is working because it's fun. Let's make this a bit smaller. Let's go back to 100. Oh, wrong one. That's what happens when you make everything in one class. 100 cubed. And let's, instead of making it red, 0, 0, hard, let's make it green. Super green. Take a look at that again. Woo. There it goes. Okay, now I haven't guessed. The problem is we haven't made a body for our first thing to stop the collisions. So let's do that real quick. Let's see, we'll do it here. Var, let's call it booty. Rigid body. Gets new rigid body. And we'll do new AWP box shape. You know what I forgot last one? So we want to have the same, so 1, 2, 3, 10. 1, 2, 3, okay. And object container, mesh. And we want this one to be rigid so gravity doesn't affect it, so we'll make it the mass 0. Here, 100, 100. It's what we have, so we don't need to put any parameters in. Booty. Booty. Sorry, I'm immature. Dot position. Gets mesh dot position. And then world. Add rigid body. And booty. Okay. Then display that. And that's the very basics of Away 3D and Away Physics. Not going to go too deep because then this tutorial would go on forever. However, there's a few things I'd like to point out. You can, like world, for the physics, Away Physics is still in alpha. It's from the Bullet engine, which is in C++, converted mostly into the SWIC over here with some flat or AS3 source code, but so not as efficient as the actual Bullet engine because it's not in a sandbox. So, but you have to manage your own memory, so there's this and that. Okay, so you can add a rigid body. Something I find annoying with Away Physics is add rigid body with group. This you can add, so like booty. Now you can give it a group ID, which is an int, which makes it difficult. I wish it was a string, because that would make sorting a lot easier, but there's ways around that. So 4, and then mask. Now this, what I thought first was to say, hey, these are the things I don't want this rigid body to collide with. It's actually the stuff you want the rigid body to collide with, which I would prefer it if it were the things you don't want it to collide with. At least with my last project, there's less things I wanted to collide with than more things that I did want it to. Yeah, I'd rather mask out the things I didn't want, but what are you gonna do? Sorry, what are you gonna do? There's that. Another thing to know about the Away Physics really is back here. As for the time step, it has to be 0.333 or less, otherwise it will not detect collisions efficiently or at all. So what I usually do is I do 1 over 100, so 0, 0, 1. No, that's 1,000. 0, 1. And that, for the most part, makes it so it can detect the collisions because there's more steps per enter frame, but between the enter frames and such. Because, so for example, you can go to the rigid body and just do body dot add. You can add an event listener and need AWP events dot and you can say collision added, so whenever it hits something, so actually we'll do it here, AWP events collision added, and we'll just call it hit. No, not hit area, just hit. Okay. Yeah. Protected function hit. No. Other side. AWP event gets null void, and we'll just trace hit. Okay, so if we put this up to, let's do just 0.1 and play this and watch the output. Watch, it'll work. Oh, namespace 76. Oh, again, protected. I can't seem to spell that correctly. Okay. Boop. See, no, not saying hit. These collisions aren't being detected, so let's go to 0, 1. And it should detect it. Should. This also means stuff moves a little bit slower. Oh, it's not detecting it. We might have to go all the way through. So 1, 0.01. I was having this problem with my last project, and I nearly wrote my own collision manager. Boop, boop. It's still not detecting it. Okay, let's 1 divided by 100. 1 divided by 100. It's still not detecting it. Like, this is a bug, and it's been reported to the Away Physics, and really, I think people were going to, they had to go all the way to 500 or 600 before it would detect, and then they were able to go back. For me, I tried a bunch of things and it wasn't working, and then all of a sudden it was working. You see, now that I increased the step, it's going really slow. But hopefully it'll detect the collision. And no, it does not. So, yeah, that's something to keep in mind. It's fickle to get this to detect collisions, and I'm not sure how I did. It just happened after messing around with it. Try that. So, hit, collision added, yeah. And boop. Yeah, so that's something to keep an eye on. Hopefully when they're to their benefit, Away Physics is an alpha. It was developed on a different language. So anything with Away 3D, something to, if you can import from different files. For our project, we imported stuff from Away or 3ds Max and converted it to a .3ds file, which is amazing and super simple. There's plenty of tutorials online. But one thing to notice is if you have a material that has, or a mesh or an object that has multiple materials for like different colors, it will not import properly to Away 3D because they can't support multiple color materials like we have up here for an object or a mesh. So it'll take just the first one and apply it to the whole thing, but it will also increase the loading time because it's trying to deal with that error. But that can be fixed by just having it load instead of a color material. I believe bitmap, or not bitmap. Bitmap material. Actually, flash away bitmap texture, and you can do a bitmap texture and apply that. And if you do that, it will increase loading time when setting up a scene, especially if it has multiple textures or if the texture file is large and you have to set up all that. But you can have it, and that will give you multiple colors on the same object, but it also increase memory. So just things to note. So yeah, that really concludes this tutorial on the basics of Away 3D and Away Physics. Once everything's working, it's pretty fun and all that. It's great to work with, especially since Away 3D follows the same thing, same add child, add scene stuff for the rest of Flash, for sprites and movie clips and buttons. So it makes life easy. So yeah, I love Away 3D. Away Physics needs some work, but it's pretty decent when it works. So yeah, I hope you all have a good day, and see you later.